Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In this video, we are going to explain the bones of the lower arm, which is also called antebrachium or sometimes called the forearm. There are two bones in our forearm. The one is ulna and the other is radius. Ulna is located medially. On the medial side, there is ulna, and the lateral side, there is radius. Or we can say on the thumb side, there is radius, and on the little finger side, there is ulna. Ulna is a typical long bone, means it has two ends and a shaft between them. You can see in the diagram, this is the ulna, and this is the anterior view. And the next diagram, the second diagram, you can see this is the posterior view of the ulna, and this is the lateral view of the ulna. So if we look at the anterior view, the view from above, this is the anterior view. So the proximal end, this is the shaft, this is the distal end. The head of ulna is located distally. Distal end is round somewhat, and there is a small projection which is called styloid process, while the proximal end is irregular and somewhat a little hook shaped, just like a hook, while the shaft is somewhat triangular. If we get the transverse section of the shaft, it would look like a triangle because it has three borders and three surfaces. First of all, if we talk about the borders, so this is the anterior border. The second one, which is the sharp border, it is the interosseous border. You can differentiate the anterior border from the interosseous border by the sharpness of the border. If it is sharp, the sharpest border is interosseous border, and the interosseous border is located toward the radius because here is the interosseous membrane or interosseous ligament attached to the interosseous border, and this ligament or this membrane holds the radius and ulna together. So in this case, the radius should be there on this side, toward on the interosseous side. And from this we can conclude that this is the left ulna. And the third border is the posterior border, which is located on the big side. The second diagram, you can see this is the posterior border. There are three surfaces. The one is anterior surface. You can see this from the top. This is anterior surface. On this side, consider my finger. So this is the anterior surface, and this side, this is the medial surface. This side, this is the middle surface, and on the back side, this is the posterior surface. So there are three surfaces. If we talk about the proximal end, so you can see in the three diagrams, this is the anterior view, posterior, and this is lateral view. From the lateral view, you can see this here is a small projection above and one is below, and between these is the trochlear notch. First of all, we should know the articulation of the ulna. This side, the proximal side of ulna, is in articulation with the humerus, and the distal end, which is called the head of ulna, it is located distally. It articulates with the radius, sidewise with the radius and carpal bones. And the previous video we discussed the anatomy of the humerus, and on the distal end of the humerus there were two articulation surfaces. The one was called capitulum and the other was trochlea. So the capitulum is for the radius and the trochlea was for the ulna, and this is the trochlear notch where the trochlea is occupied. This is the socket for the trochlea. Above the trochlea, this is Chronophosis, and below the trochlea, this is called the coronoid process. In the first diagram, you can see this is there. It is named. This is the coronoid process, and On the lateral surface of the coronary process, there is another articulation surface. This is the coronary process, and on the lateral side of the coronary process, there is another articulation surface. And this articulation surface is for the radius. The head of the radius articulates with this surface. We should know that the head of the radius articulates both with the humerus and the ulna. Similarly, the ulna articulates both with the radius and the humerus. So the trochlear notch is for the humerus articulation and radial notch is for the radius articulation. The radius articulates sideways with the ulna. From the anterior view, you can see in this diagram, this is the coronary process. In between this is trochlear notch and above is ulnar process. And on the lateral side of the coronary process, this is the lateral side, this is the medial side. As we discussed earlier, that the radius is located laterally toward the interosseous border. This is the radius, so it is the lateral side. And the lateral side of the coronary process, here is the radial notch. Consider my finger as the radius, so it articulates sideways with the radial notch of the ulna. And here it articulates sideways, and above it articulates with the capitulum of humerus, while the ulna articulates with the trochlea of humerus and sideways with the radius. So there are two articulation surfaces, trochlear notch and radial notch. Below the coronary process, there is a small projection which is called the ulnar tuberosity. Because it is on the ulna, so it is called ulnar tuberosity. But in the case of notch, the notch was for the radius attachment, so this was called radial notch. On the lateral side, you can see there is another small ridge which is called the supinator crest. Here is the supinator muscle attached. So if we revise, here is this is the proximal end of ulna. There is an articulation surface for the trochlea, which is called trochlear notch. Above is the ulnar process, below is the coronary process, and on the lateral side of coronary process there is radial notch. Below the coronary process is the ulnar tuberosity, and on the lateral side there is a small crest which is called supinator crest for the attachment of supinator muscle. There are three borders, three surfaces. The sharpest border is called interosseous border, and from this we can determine the side, to which side of the body this bone belongs. And distally, the head of ulna is located, and it has a small projection which is called a styloid process. Now we will talk about the muscle attached to the ulna. So in this diagram you can see, first of all, the tricep brachii are attached to the olecranon of the ulna. This was the olecranon process above the trochlea. Triceps brachii are attached to the olecranon process, and below the olecranon process there is an attachment surface for the anconeus muscle. Anconeus muscle is also considered as a part of triceps brachii because of its same function and same blood and nerve supply. So it is just located below the triceps brachii. Supinator muscle, as we talked, there was a ridge, supinator ridge, to which the supinator muscle is attached. And there are three muscles. For the three muscles which are attached on the posterior side, This was lateral view, and this is the posterior side. So on the posterior side there are three muscles, and there are, the first one is abductor pallicus longus, which help in abduction of the thumb. So this is the abduction of the thumb. If we move away the thumb, so from the fingers, this is the abduction. If we move the thumb away in this way, this is the abduction of the thumb. So for the muscle responsible for abduction of the thumb is abductor pallicus longus. Another one is extensor pallicus longus. It helps in extension of the thumb. This is the flexion, this is the extension of the thumb. And extensor indicis. The third one is extensor indicis, which help in extension of the index finger. So if I am extending the finger, this is because of extensor indicis muscle. On the anterior side, just below the trochlear notch, there is attached brachialis on the coronary processes, and the on the anterior surface of coronary process, there is attached brachialis muscle, and laterally there are flexor digitorum and medially. If we talk about the proximally end, so below the trochlear notch, there is the coronary process, and on the anterior surface of the coronary process there is attached the brachialis muscle. On the medial side of the coronary process there is attached the flexor digitorum superficialis and pronator teres muscle. These two muscles are attached on the medial side of the coronary process. On the shaft on the anterior surface, there is attached flexor digitorum profundus, while on the 2/3 of proximal shaft, while the 1/3 distal shaft, there is obliquely attached to the pronator quadratus muscle. So these were the muscles that were attached to the ulna. These were the muscles of ulna.